Hello, you two. It's so nice to have two lovely ladies with me today. So it's great to see you. So, how are you
Pleasure,
both? All right?
same.
You
Yeah,
good?
very good, very good. Thank you, Rebecca, for having us here.
Oh, it's lovely to
Thank
see
you.
you guys
We're
again. It's
very excited. This is going to be a very enriching call, I am sure.
yeah, no, I'm looking forward to this. So obviously we're going to be talking about recruitment challenges for the TRI practices of sort of small accounting firms and SME sort of size accounting firms. And one of the things that I always hear is how difficult it is to find people to recruit. So is there actually a shortage of qualified accountants today? What do you think, Laura? Is this true?
Yeah, we do see that there's some shortage in the total number of accountants. And this number, it has been growing through the years, like the past 10 years. It grew by 500,000 certified accountants all over the world. However, the need for accountants grew as well. And there is where you see the gap. It's not that it's happening in all geographies the same. So you will find that there's a shortage, especially in Europe and United States, Canada, because there are accountants that are leaving the profession, they are retiring, and then you don't find new recruits that are choosing that career because it's often seen as a very time demanding and not very related to the work-life balance that these new generations expect. And then you see some other tendencies in other geographies like Africa and Asia has been growing in the number of professionals, but also with their economic growth. But yeah, and then of course, pandemic put some more spices to something that was already cooking there. But yeah, it's been a challenge to find qualified professionals for these practices. Yes.
No, I'm interested in what you're saying there about what youngsters look for, because obviously we had the pandemic, which I think shook everybody up in terms of their working practice. How have things changed? Do you think that those changes you were talking about what younger generations want is to do with sort of pre and post pandemic? How do you think the pandemic affected this expectation?
So basically before COVID, small and medium-sized firms more typically relied on people that were local talent. So we are based in a city or small town, and people that will work in your company are people that are living close to your office. And because people needed to go physically to the office every day, you have clear boundaries between your professional life and then your personal life starts when you leave your office. And pandemic would cause was a like a sudden change there, right? Because we all needed to shift to remote work from one day to the other. And this made that these geographical boundaries that we had in order to look for a job, they disappear because now I can sit in my home and work for an office that is 2 hours away, but I don't have to go there. So I'm not compromising on my personal time or my family time. And at the same time, maybe I'm working for a larger company, which gives me a higher salary, more benefits, that has value that align better with me. You name it. The reasons why are broad and different. So that changed for the professional. You can hire from everywhere in the country, everywhere in the world. Maybe if they're in your time zone, they speak the same language. Well, you don't care, and you can hire. And competition became for this talent became more international. So I can understand for smaller firms, it has become a little bit harder sometimes to keep up with other larger firms offer, and what their brand, like employer brand, has to offer to these professionals. Yes.
Oh, it's really interesting because you're sort of talking about obviously the sort of pandemic, and what I've perhaps done Daniel talk to us about the sort of generational impact as well, because I think that's something that I know I'm experiencing at home with my two daughters, you know, and the very different expectations they have in terms of their lives. And I'm kind of wondering how those two kind of mix together in the pot, because it's quite it's an interesting time really with young people. So Laura, you know, what do you see as the sort of generational impacts, and what are the sort of real differences that you're seeing, particularly for restructuring firms?
Yeah, it is tricky. And just like Laura highlighted, the pandemic really flipped the script for employee expectations in the workplace. So we are now adding another layer of complexity with the generational diversity element in the workplace. So just like you said, it's very interesting. So for instance, let's talk about millennials and Gen Z, which are so feared, but they already represent 40% of the workforce,
So
globally speaking.
just so everybody's really clear, because I think these generational things get thrown around, and just so that everybody's really clear, what years are you born in for each of these sort of generational blocks? Because I think that really helps, because I think people do get mixed up about what's a Gen Z or what's it.
So baby boomers, they were born 1946 through 1964. Gen X, which is the following, was 1965 through 1980.
Right.
Then come the millennials,
Yeah,
1981
I'm
through
a Gen
1996. Gen Z, 1997 forward, right? Which is, and then Gen Alpha is coming soon. So I also leave that on the table.
yeah.
So millennials and Gen Z, so 1994 onwards, we already represent 40% of the workforce. Yeah, and these groups are disrupting and shaking things up in the industry, in the accounting industry. We love it, but we fear it a little if we don't know how to handle it. So, you know, traditionally accounting firms offer this clear hierarchies model, this predictable career paths, and most of all, stability. Yeah, but emerging talent wants more. They want purpose. And that cannot be necessarily packed and given out as it is. So we're looking at generations that want to feel like their work contributes to something, and that is adding to a larger and meaningful goal. Okay, so we're also looking at the fact that they want opportunities for growth, but we're not talking about the traditional promotions type of growth. Instead, they're looking for cross-functional learning. They want to have mentorship. They want to have skill development. And companies might not necessarily have all of that in motion in order to catch up. We're also talking about generations that grew up with technology, the technology element, and then the pandemic definitely did a breaking point for all of us in that sense. So firms that used to be perhaps stiff, you know, from the outside, they need to become agile, they need to become innovative, they need to open these spaces for collaboration. And that can be really tricky when you already have a workforce that is available with these new characteristics. What we have seen, and just as an example, this one firm in Montreal, they were having trouble. They were a medium-sized accounting firm, and they launched this reverse mentorship program, which basically had their junior staff mentoring senior leaders in topics like emerging trends and technology. And in return, senior leaders would mentor them on strategic management and other items. So we really have to keep in mind, and this is why I'm sharing this example, that collaboration comes with respect. And this is built on that. And we need to really integrate these generations, not just having them work together, but just surviving, you know. So my advice, if firms want to attract and keep young talent, then they need to move beyond the "this is how we've always done it" mindset, you know.
Yeah, I think anybody over the age of 50 knows that you have to kind of try and move with the times. Difficult and painful sometimes, though.
Yeah, painful. Yeah.
And I think it is painful, and I think change is a very difficult thing for people to do in a firm that's very well established and a system that's well established. But well, just on this sort of moving around, and Laura mentioned it before, so I'll come back to you, Laura. I mean, you talked about the people being able to work with people who are, or young people working with businesses who are a long way away, but equally I understand that they want to work when they're looking for a job with somebody who's only sort of 15 minutes commute away. So it's like either anywhere in the world online, or if they've got to go physically, they want it next door. Is this right?
Yeah.
So how does that affect recruitment? I mean, that makes things really difficult if you're in quite a specialized role like turnaround and restructuring, but they have to have quite a lot of supervision, particularly when they're young and learning.
Yeah, that's completely true. What you're saying is completely true. So yeah, and we've seen that having great opportunities, and then they will ask, oh, well, this, how far from my home is this? And it's like, oh, maybe an hour. No, I'm not driving an hour. And so this makes it really, really hard for recruiting, very challenging, because of course, if there is a requirement for the people to go physically on site because of the nature of the tasks they are performing, it's very critical that they are there. Okay, so you as a managing partner or as a senior leader in an accounting firm will have to compromise somewhere. It's like, are you going to go for a shorter pool of talent that live close by, are willing to do this and go every day to your office, and maybe you're leaving out great people that has great knowledge that they could contribute a lot to what you're doing, but okay, they are not willing to, and so you're choosing to select from this pool of talent? Or are you willing to review internally what needs to be changed in your organization in matter of processes, in matter of culture, in matter of tools, technology, as Danny was saying, and also in client expectations? Are you willing as a managing partner, as a senior leader, to establish, yeah, okay, so yeah, we always did this on site and we had our people there, but starting from now on, this and this and these other tasks are going to be performed remotely, and this we will keep on site, and because we know that these things can be handled these ways. But at some point you will need to compromise, because if not, recruiting will become for sure impossible for you.
No, absolutely. And I suppose that really affects trust, doesn't it? Because the thing about remote working is that you need a lot of trust in people to, and I think a lot of older firms, old, I don't mean they're old people, but they're firms that are more established, that's the word I'm looking for, not old, but they find it's very difficult for them to feel trust when people aren't in the office, because they're used to being on top of them. So how does a firm, who, when they've got that sort of restructuring issue and they're trying to train people in an area which really does need very careful supervision, how do they develop that trust when they're working remotely, as you just suggested? How do they do that?
That's wonderful, and wonderful question. That's a wonderful question. So you need to, first of all, change your mindset, and senior leadership needs to be truly convinced that they will want to go in this path, right? Because that's the first thing. If you're going to say, yeah, I'm going to go in the path, and then I'm not willing to do anything that comes beyond that, well, we are in a problem there. Like, we have a bad starting point. But let's say that you, as a senior leader, as a managing partner, you're committed to this path. Then you will have to start working with frameworks that establish clear expectations for each one of the persons in your firm. So I'm sitting here, I understand what is clearly expected from me. I understand which is my authority, and there are frameworks to develop that. So where I can make decisions, what do I need to escalate, what do I need to inform to someone else, and you need to establish that and create that framework work from you. You will also need to review your technology. Are you working in a cloud-based environment that fosters collaborability, that I'm updating my work and my supervisor can jump in, or someone from my team can jump in and see what I'm doing, and online have this kind of sense of what's going on. Also, you need to build or to transform your culture, and that's why I said this needs a lot of commitment from the senior leadership, because you will have to trust that you have professionals. We are all grown-ups, even the younger ones are grown-ups, and this means that we as human beings, we're professionals, we are responsible, and you need to trust me that when you assign a task to me, I'm going to comply it to the best that I can. And if I'm not doing it, it's maybe because I didn't understand, or maybe because I lack some skills, but it's not because I'm not committed to you. So having this open and clear communication, having Q&A sessions, having leaders that are accessible, online accessible. I mean that I can write a short message to you, Rebecca, can we have like 15 minutes when you're available, because I have some doubts with my job. And also recognizing these people. So I did something good, I took a good decision, okay, I get a recognition. And this not always means money. It's like there are many firms that have these kind of stars, like you would give to young kids, you know, like the positive reinforcements that you want a sticker with a star. Well,
I really do. Can I?
Yeah. So it works more or less the same. You get the stars, and when you get together, I don't know, 20 stars, maybe you get a cinema ticket or a movie ticket for you and your partner. So it's not really expensive, but you're feeling, oh, okay, yeah, I did something good, and my supervisor gave me a star. And as I said, when you go to the more formal part, you need to establish these risk management protocols, right? So it's like, okay, you're a junior, you have this task, you have your metrics, and then there's some supervision on your work, and that senior gets supervised by someone else. So when we are talking about this hierarchy system that accounting firms have, we are not saying that this should go away, right? Probably this will be kept, but also putting the other flavors of projects, of reverse mentoring for certain areas, shifting a little bit the environment there where you work.
Those are really practical and helpful ideas for people. I really like that, because I think the hard thing is making that change without having examples of how you can do it and how to achieve it. So I think that's very helpful. So Danny, with all those lovely examples of practical ideas that Laura's just given us, have you seen these things put into place in businesses where it's not just been a surface sort of like, oh yes, we want to work in a hybrid way, but there hasn't been any support to it? Where have you seen these really good ideas put into play and been taken seriously within an organization? Can you give us some examples at all?
Yeah, definitely. I think that's a great question, because it really gets to the heart of what drives sustainable recruitment and retention, you know. So the truth is, this surface level changes, sometimes they prove effective in the short term, but rarely move the needle in a meaningful way, you know. So to see real results, firms need to make a deeper cultural changes, like Lau said, that resonate with their people. Now, disclaimer for all of the leaders out there: you cannot motivate people. You can only align their motivations and goals with yours. Okay. So let me share a few examples of a surface level change that we have seen, and that, you know, it really didn't deliver. I think we've all seen companies introducing perks, right? Free gym memberships, catered lunches, even wellness days, and all of that sounds great, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, it
but
really
here's the
does.
thing. Yeah.
I should come and sample them.
You know, it looks appealing, but
Yeah.
here's the thing. 6 months later, leaders go back and looking at the numbers, and the turnover rate hasn't really budged. Why? Because perhaps the problem is not really that employees are lacking perks. Perhaps it's the lack of clarity about their career paths, right? So again, if your team does not feel connected with your mission or see how their work is contributing to the bigger picture,
Yeah.
you're not really going to have a deep down change. So second disclaimer, do not disregard deep level cultural and organizational diagnosis before even moving forward. Now let's contrast it with examples of a deeper cultural change that, you know, we've seen has really worked. It's actually simpler than it looks. Very successful firms go back to their teams and ask them two very simple but very powerful questions. What motivates you? And what do you need to thrive and get there? Okay, so the answers can be illuminating. You know, companies, we have seen our clients realizing that what their employees really needed, and we stress this, is mentorship, is transparent career pathways. You know, we're seeing that there is a lot of disruptive career paths, not the traditional ways that we've used to see in the past. And also, like Lau said, more recognition for their contributions. So understanding this really makes all the difference in the world when you want to go pull a piece and hope that the whole piece doesn't fall apart, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah, so changes really start occurring. And some of the strategies that we have seen, a couple of takeaways here, you know, it helps them to revamp their performance review system. So companies stop focusing only on KPIs, but start introducing KDIs, key development indicators.
Right. That's
This,
interesting.
yeah, you know, so this peer-to-peer recognition programs, which by the way, Gen X really loves. So team members can publicly celebrate each other's successes.
Yeah, can't see
Rolling
why they
out
like
these,
that.
yeah.
It's like social media, isn't it? It's absolutely that.
Exactly. So what's the key takeaway here? Surface level changes, of course, they'll make a splash, but they're not really going to put, you know, a band-aid on a deeper wound, is what we're trying to say. So cultural change doesn't really happen overnight. You have to understand your team. You have to understand their motivations. And it's a process. But when you commit to that, the reward, you know, it's not only measurable, you really see a team that is not only performing and surviving, they're thriving.
Yeah, really, really getting something from it. One of the other podcasts that I've got to do very shortly for next year is about women and diversity within this area. And we have 3 TRI experts that are going to come and talk to me about it from different countries. Do you feel that these working models that we're talking about here really help enhance diversity and attracting and retaining different types of talent? Do you think that actually happens?
Well, I think that it truly remains a challenge. Yeah, a lot of things have changed. There's evolving working models are, you know, moving at a faster pace than we have seen in the past 10 years, maybe. But diversity still remains such a critical topic because honestly, it goes far beyond the numbers, you know? So we've seen a lot of firms making great strides in diversifying their workforce, you know, bringing in people from underrepresented groups, and I say this between brackets, women, for instance, or these professionals with these non-traditional career paths. Women really fit in there, by the way, because maybe they left on you know, maternity leave for a couple of years, and then they try to go back and they cannot really insert themselves back into the professional life as they wish.
Very difficult. Very difficult.
It is, yeah. So representation alone is not enough, and that's where we see that companies get stagnant. Actually, inclusion is the journey, you know. So what we mean by this is, all right, let's take a look at evolving working models. What do they actually look like, and how are they helping to bring diversity in? Sure, for starters, remote and hybrid setups have been game changers, especially for women and caregivers. So pre-pandemic, we all knew this, and especially in the accounting and professional services field, the traditional workplace was quite stiff, so it wasn't really accommodating. It represented long commutes, rigid hours,
Oh, yeah.
the
I
the
remember
free
it well.
days. Yeah,
I
you
really
know
do.
well that free days were only left for emergencies, not really as a flexibility perk. And then there was this unspoken culture, and you'll tell me if you also remember that, of being the last one to leave the
Oh,
office.
yes. And the
Yeah.
first one in. I remember
Yeah.
all of those.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that
Yeah.
really created all sorts of barriers for real growth. So again, half of the job is to bring diversity and bring women, if it's your company goal, to the company. But how are you really helping them to balance demanding careers and aspirations with personal responsibilities? So again, diversity doesn't really initiate with the surface level. If your policies don't translate into a culture of inclusion, then you will lose people just as fast as you attracted them, you know?
Yeah, no,
So
I
you have,
completely get that. But
yeah.
do you think that the different regulations in different countries really impact on this ability to adapt these different working models in terms of sort of parental leave, maternity leaves? I mean, they're so different everywhere. I mean, Laura, what do you think? Do they help with these working models, or are they restricted in some geographic areas because of the different
Okay. Yeah, that's a great
regulations?
question. Yeah, that's a great question because for sure you will see that each country has different regulations, and first of all, we're very adamant on companies complying with the local laws, right? So first of all, yeah, comply with the local law, but then the local law can be very strict and very not yeah not I don't know if it's strict is the best word. Maybe they can be very little interest for the women, and very short parental leaves, and then you will have some other countries that have 1 year parental leave that will give you much more opportunities there. What we think is that if your company you're playing in a multi-country kind of arena, your company needs to have this clear culture of inclusion, as Danny said. And yeah, of course, you will comply with the law, but you will find a way of making this part of your policies, even when you don't have the exact same days of parental leave in Argentina, in the US, or in Germany, to name a few countries. But you will make it work because this will be part of your culture. So you will foster this flexibility that comes with being a parent, because you will need to have more flexible schedule, and you will accept as a leader that some things might happen, and then you shift to this culture of results, and I mean results in a good way. And we've talked a little bit about this when we mentioned the trust, but take my case, for example. I am a mom of 2 young girls, and sometimes I need to shift my schedule, but I know what I need to address. So yeah, maybe sometimes I will take care of my kids and then come back and connect and stay working until it's time to have dinner, because I was able to know what is asked for me by my organization, and at the same time I have the flexibility. And you will see, like at Ames, we are very much into this, and so you will see that there's lots of women in our workforce and lots of women in senior leadership roles, because as a company we foster this type of inclusion
Yes.
inclusion culture. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. I mean, we work on the same basis, virtually, and we have a lot of women that are working really at the top of their game because they have that kind of flexibility around the children. So it's interesting, and how grateful the women are for that opportunity. Actually,
Yeah.
they're incredibly
Yeah.
loyal because of it. So
Yeah.
one of the things I've noticed in my career is you go into a firm or even to a business or whatever, and you'll have sort of the management team who tend to be a type of person when they founded the business or whatever. They're the type of person, they have similar sort of ideas about everything, the way they look at the world. And so they recruit in like, and they recruit in like, and they're the people they've recruited then recruit in like. So you end up with a firm with a very distinct culture because everybody's very similar. So there's a whole diversity question there as well about whether that's good, but that's not what I want to ask about. Where does it become unconscious bias, which maybe restricts that diversity, and when is it a positive culture that maybe restricts the practices in terms of recruitment? Do you see what I'm saying? That it can be an organized. Is it a good thing to have a very strong culture? Because that's what they say to you: have a very distinct culture in your business that everyone that works for you identifies with. But that can also then restrict your hiring and your recruitment process. So where's the line between unconscious bias and that?
It's the cultural fit dilemma, right?
Yeah.
And it's a very complex topic. On one hand, like you said, we all want teams that work well together and align with the firm's values, and that's not wrong. But if we're not careful, cultural fit can become a code for hiring people who look, think, and act like the people already on the team. Yeah. And that's recipe for stagnation. Yes. Okay, so it can be very tricky. The key here is to shift the conversation from cultural fit to value alignment. Okay, so that's how we actually implement it in our recruiting processes.
Oh, that's interesting. So it's the values of an individual you look at as opposed to, whether they're like you in terms of outlook and so on. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, we always tell our clients, focus on what the candidate can bring to the role, not whether you would enjoy having lunch with them or not. So
that's very good. I like that.
yeah. So you really have to ask yourself, instead of the mindset of does this person fit in, rather asking again, value alignment. Does this person bring the skills, perspectives, and energy that we need to grow and evolve? So in practical terms, Rebecca, this means using structured, objective hiring processes. Okay, so I know those non-measurable aspects of personality, sometimes we often rely on gut instinct, but this is exactly where unconscious bias often sneaks in. So you really have to get a hold of tools like competency-based interviewing. Again, this dilemma, I bring this dilemma to the table. Everyone wants representation, but not everyone knows what to do with it once they have it in front of them. Okay, so that's where strong recruiting and organizational processes come into place.
Yeah, I can see that. So just to finish off then, Laura, if you were to look into the future 5 to sort of 10 years ahead, what fundamental changes an accountancy firm that has a TRI function going to have to make in order to keep talent walking in the door? What would you advise them to do, just to summarize?
So if we look into the future, I would say embrace the flexibility. Remember what we said about fostering collaboration and encourage professionals to take initiative, contribute with ideas that will give them this sense of belonging into the company. Work with a purpose. And I mean this for sure, earning profits and making money because we are businesses is one of the goals, but not the only goal. So work with a purpose, understand why people go to work every day, and make them feel that they contribute to that purpose. And provide opportunities for continuous learning. What we have already started seeing is that retaining top talent, you need to make them available for growth. So, and as Danny said, it not always is being better at exact same thing that you do, but sometimes being part of committees like diversity committee or social responsibility or environmental policies, or something that will allow me as a professional become more rounded. And I'm not just the expert on restructuring. I'm not just the expert on taxes. I'm not just the expert on audit services, which is fine. I mean, it's really good, but I would like to learn some other stuff. So yeah, I think in order to retain talent, that could be our advices for the future.
No, that's brilliant, Laura. Well, thank you so much for coming along today and talking to me. I've really enjoyed that. It's it's a complex subject, and I think some of the practical advice will be really helpful to people. So thank you. But thank you so much for coming today, and hopefully see you again soon.
Yeah,
our pleasure.
Thank you
very much.
Thank you for having us, Rebecca. It's been a pleasure.